Good morning, dear students. Welcome to BPHES CSRD Institute of Social Work Research online classes on social work. Today, we are going to discuss Unit number 1, Part 2, Social Casework, Components of Social Casework. Dear students, in the beginning, I would like to remind you, please open your chat box and as and when you listen to the classes, give your queries, doubts, comments and remarks. We will respond to them in the chat box. So we have discussed yesterday the concept, meaning, history and values of social casework. And today we will move on to the components of social casework. What are the components of social casework? Components are first discussed and explained by Helen Harris Perlman in her book Social Casework, a Problem-Solving Method in 1957. She has given the simplest framework of social casework, and it is known as the problem-solving model, which has conveniently 4 P's: person, problem, place, and process. Now, it's very easy to understand the different components of social casework from this scheme. So let us discuss one by one. The person, the first component, and in this we discuss about the person who seeks help. When a person seeks help, he is addressed as the client. Client in social work does not mean only the person who is in need of help. It also includes other stakeholders who have contributed to the development of this problem. So it includes the client's family members, the significant other contacts we can call the stakeholders who are part of, who can be the part of the social casework. The person in social casework is a unique individual. He has a unique personality. He has a unique upbringing, unique cultural, linguistic, religious, economic, and social background. So in order to understand the person, the social caseworker has to study all these personal characteristics before he or she begins helping her or him. We do not consider that people have universal problem and there are universal solutions. We always uphold the individuality, the individual uniqueness in the development of the problem and in the suggestion to solve those problems. Therefore, when we begin the casework, The first step is to understand the person in his environment. Sometimes it is known as ecological perspective. We try to understand the person in his or her environment. That environment is very unique. Everyone does not have the same type of cultural, social, economic background. Therefore, we need to understand a person with his unique cultural background, unique family background. There also we have to understand other people who contribute to the person's problem. They are the significant others and collaterals. The significant others means the teachers, some adult, some important person, key resource person, whom the client respect, who have importance in client's life, who can help the client in future to solve his or her problems. Collateral means the family members, the blood relations, the person who are in very close contact with the client. They are the parents, they are the brothers and sisters, and the kith and kin, the family members. The caseworker may have to interact with the family members, may have to interact with all the stakeholders in order to understand the client better and to guide the person towards a solution. So, person constitute the first component of social casework. Unless and until you analyze the personal characteristics, the person's psychological makeup, his social background, the influence of other people on this client, we will not be able to proceed in helping the person. Now, the second component, that is problem. Problem in social casework means an unfulfilled personal need, or we can say impaired social functioning. So there are two things with regard to the problem. There are two dimensions with regard to the problem. One is the individual need, the unfulfilled need, that is within the person. The second one is his or her adjustment with the society, the client's functioning in the society. Here the caseworker tried to understand how effectively this person is getting adjusted in the society, how effectively this person is interacting with the family members, other people in the society. So often the person's own limitations, person's own unfulfilled needs. For example, a child who is in the school, child has certain needs. The child requires attention, care, love, understanding of the adults. In the school, it is the teachers. At home, it is the parents. So while the teachers take classes, the teachers should provide adequate attention to each and every child. When the child notices that the child is neglected, he or she is not given adequate attention by the teacher, the child starts behaving in some ways to attract the attention of the teacher. And what happens? The teacher may misjudge the child, may consider that the child is going to be a troublemaker because child is trying to understand, seek the attention of the teacher unnecessarily. The child may be labeled as a behavioral problem. It is because of the poor understanding of the child's need. Therefore, the problem sometimes means an unfulfilled need of the person. To understand the needs, the famous psychologist Abraham Maslow has given the framework of hierarchy of the needs: physiological needs, safety needs, belongingness, need of belongingness, self-esteem needs, and the self-actualization needs. He has told that these are universal needs for everybody, but seek unique expression in each person. So there is a kind of need analysis required to understand the problems faced by the client. So that is the first part in the problem, understanding the unfulfilled need of the client. The second part, how the person is managing himself in the society. So there is, we call the personality. Personality is the client's way of adjusting with the society. Persona means mask. Person wears different masks in different social situations. That is his coping. That is his or her way of getting well adjusted in the society. That is the way the person tries to function effectively in the society. Therefore, problem means the social caseworker tries to understand all the needs of the client. At the same time, the social caseworker tries to understand how the person is trying to fulfill his or her needs. What are the coping mechanisms? What are the defense mechanisms? What are the ways and means this person is trying to get well adjusted in the society? This functioning part gives highlight into the problem. The objective of the casework is to help this person to function effectively in the society. Help this child, help this client to fulfill his or her needs in a socially accepted way. So problem is very simple: to understand the needs which the person is trying to meet through his interaction with the society. Problem is trying to understand how the person functions in the society and help him to function well, help him or her to get well adjusted in the society. So that is the problem in social casework. Now coming to the third component, that is place. Place in the context of social casework refers to an agency, a government or a non-government welfare agency. It is the agency set up where the client meets the professional, the social caseworker. Therefore, we can consider the caseworker is also part of the agency. In Indian context, sometimes there are freelance social workers who are not affiliated to any particular agency, and he or she may be practicing casework in the community setup. There, we should consider social worker as the fifth P: person, problem, place, process, and the profession or professional. So in Indian setup, we sometimes add professional as the fifth P. But in the Western setup or the ideal setup, the casework should be practiced in an agency setup. In an agency setup. Therefore, agency include the profession and the professional. It is a social work agency. It is a social welfare agency which provides the social casework service. So this agency is the place which has an office setup, which has a confidential private office setup where the person can share, where the client can share his problems, his needs openly and confidentially with the social worker. So that is the agency. And you know, every agency has its own objectives, its own activities, policies and resources. All these things constitute the place, the agency characteristics. So before a client is admitted to an agency, the agency has policy requirements. The agency has its own procedural requirements. They have to be fulfilled. First of all, agency has a vision and mission. We know some agencies are focusing on children. Some agencies are specialized in women. For example, family counseling centers. So agency has its own mandate, its own vision, mission, and policy framework. And they have their own expertise. They have expert professionals. They have specialized caseworkers. If the agency is a child welfare agency, it will definitely have specialists who can deal with children's issues. Therefore, when the client is referred to some agency, the agency features, the agency mandate is to be taken into consideration. Then the child will get the best help. We cannot refer an alcoholic, an addict person to a child welfare agency. The child welfare agency may not have the expertise, may not have the social worker who is expert in de-addiction therapy. Therefore, agencies are specialized. So that specialization, the agency characteristics constitute the third component of the social casework. For effective social casework, we need to get the person to the proper agency. Social worker, as a social worker, we should have the knowledge of different type of agency setup, different type of agencies in the social welfare field, so that we can guide a person, we can refer a client to the appropriate agency, appropriate place where the person will find the best help, the person will get all his problem better understood and better resolved. Now, in the Indian context, let me extend the scope of the place. In the Western context, we always discuss agency in the place context. But in India, we cannot really stick on to the agency. Much of the social work is practiced in the slum context, in open community setup. Therefore, the meaning of place is extended to the neighborhood, the community, the social surrounding, the community setup, where the client lives, where the client is found out, where the client is assisted. For example, a community outreach setup. I can give another example. The Bal Bhavan, which is run under the auspices of Snehalaya. They have more than a dozen Bal Bhavan in the city. They are situated in the community centers. We can say the settlement house, the classical example. So we have got these community settings, mostly the urban slum settings, where the poor children, where the children are found out in the street children, the neglected children, the school dropout. Children are sent to the school, but they do not reach the school. They are in the slums, they are in the street. Sometimes they are found in the tea shop, small hotel setup. They are engaged in child labor. So social workers in India find their clients mostly in the community setup. So this community setting is also the part of the place where the social worker find out the client. We can say the primary setting in India is often the slum settings, the community setting, where the social worker first catch hold of the client, first encounters, identify there is a child, there is an adolescent girl, adolescent boy, there is a young person who is addicted, there is an unemployed young man, there is a senior citizen, there is a destitute woman. So there are people neglected who are found in the street, especially in the urban setting, urban household, the slum setting. So these settings forms the part of the place. It becomes an extension of agency. In India, it's almost like a substitute for an agency setting. We find a person in the street, and initial counseling, the initial interview, interaction with the client takes place in the street only. There is no private confidential setup. Of course, in the corner of the street, the corner of the slums, the person interact with the child, ask the whereabouts. Why are you playing in the street? Are you not going to school? You are in the school uniform, but you are not in the school. What is your problem? Can I help you? When you find a young person who is smoking or addicted, alcoholic, you meet him, you don't simply neglect him. You sometimes interact with him, talk with him, and try to understand. Your casework begins there. So that is the community setting which forms the part of the place. That is the third component of social casework. Now the fourth component is the process. This is the most important part of social casework. The other three P, person, problem, place, which include the social worker, forms the background information, the context of the casework, and the casework actually means the casework intervention, the treatment, the real help, the casework process, prakriya. So what is the social casework process, which is the fourth P of social casework? Process simply means intervention, or we can say the actual treatment. The process scientifically has been given, explained by Mary Richmond in her book Social Diagnosis. She has simplified the process into 3 steps: study, diagnosis, and treatment. So this is the basic process: study, diagnosis, and treatment. So these triple process, these triple steps constitute the process in casework. What is study? Study means understanding the person, his environment, his problem. It is trying to understand the background, the context, the historical background of the problem. It is analyzing the person in his or her cultural background, economic, social, religious context. It is analyzing the person's background. It is understanding the person's unfulfilled need. It is trying to understand the person in his environment. That is the study. Study is a kind of fact finding. Study is analyzing the data. Study is a kind of research, data collection, trying to gather all the available information from the primary as well as the secondary sources directly from the client. Much of the information, much of the facts are collected from the client himself or herself. Study also include collecting information from the collaterals, from the family members, from the significant others, from the teachers, from the employers of the client, from other stakeholders who are the part of, who share the life of the client. So study is gathering maximum information. It may take 2, 3, 4 interviews. The first few contact with the client is dedicated to understand the client, understand the client's background, to understand the client's cultural, social, family setup, to understand how the problem has evolved, to understand the historical background, history of the problem, whether the child has or whether the client has undergone any previous treatment, what were the previous interventions. Study includes all the problem related, all the person related, and the contextual, the neighborhood information, where the child is growing, where the child's family is put up. Is it a slum setup? Is it a rural setup? It's a semi-urban setup. So understanding, collecting information, analyzing all this information is the first step in the process, that is study. The second step in the process is diagnosis. Diagnosis means fixing the problem. Diagnosis means trying to find out what should be the probable treatment, what should be the probable solution. It is defining the problem. There are 2 things in diagnosis. First of all, after analyzing the fact, the caseworker comes to some conclusion about the real problems. The problem that the child says, the client says, may not be the real problem. It may be the outer problem. It is only the background. The real problem may be something else. So fixing the problem is diagnosis. It also gives the goal for the casework, goal setting. That comes under diagnosis. So here you also find out the scope of your work with the client. How much you can interfere, intervene, help. What should be the extent of the social casework? That is the goal setting. Now let me tell you an example. You have found a person, a child who is in the street, who is not going to school, who is in school uniform, but that child seems to be a school dropout. Now after understanding, after talking with the child, interacting with the child, asking him, her about his family background, about the school setup, and trying to understand the reason why this child is not attending the classes, and again exploring how many days, how many months, how long he is or she is in the street, understanding the history of the problem. So after understanding all the facts about this school dropout child, you diagnose how far you can help. You set a goal. You motivate the child, and you try to understand what is the real problem. The real problem may be the child lacks motivation. The child is facing neglect. The child is a neglected one. There is negligence on the part of the parents. The parents do not inquire whether the child has gone to the school or not. What is taught in the school, the parents do not inquire. So the negligence on the parents has been fixed. That is real problem. On the other hand, the child really lacks motivation. The child does not understand the importance of education. So you have understood the real problem. What you see outside, child is not attending the class, not attending the school. This is a problem. Of course, this is a problem. But that is not the main problem. The root problem is the parents have neglected the child. Parents do not really inquire about the child's education. Another problem, the child does not understand the importance of education. So these two problems are the root causes. They are the real problems. This fixing of the problem comes at some point of your casework. After first intervention, second interview, the third interaction, you come to fix the real problem. So this we can call the diagnosis. So you can set your goal. Then you have got two goals for your casework. The first thing is you have to motivate the child. You have to inspire the child. You have to give some examples, models of successful people in life. You have to ask the child what is the child's dream, what kind of future the child is going to live. So this is motivational part. That comes the intervention. The second part, you may have to visit the child's family and interact with the parents and understand how serious they are about the child's education. Have they ever inquired how many days this child has been in the school? Sometimes when you visit the family, you will get surprised. They're so much serious about the child's. They have put a lot of hope. They have invested so much of their time, and their only hope is the child. But the child is not in the school. The parents realize their mistake when you make them understand. When a person from the school come to the house, the parents often become serious. Yes, my child is not going to school. What is the problem? So there is a need to make the parents realize the problem the child faces. So your goal has been set. One goal is to motivate the child. The second goal of the casework may be to visit the parents and motivate the parents and make them serious about the child's education and reduce the negligence on the part of the parents. So these two things, understanding the real problem and fixing the goal, these things take place during the diagnosis. So for this diagnosis, she has given a beautiful name, social diagnosis. Diagnosis is a very popular term. We know diagnosis in medical setting. Diagnosis conducted but with the help of several tests, blood tests. So diagnose, what is the purpose of diagnosis? To fix the real problem. When you have fever, always the doctors prescribe some kind of test. Test for dengue, typhoid, now test for corona. So this testing is the part of the diagnosis. After the testing, the doctor will know, yes, this my patient is suffering from typhoid or simply a viral fever or sometime dengue or sometime COVID-19. So this can be fixed only after diagnosis. Just understanding, just seeing a patient is feverish, the doctor cannot come to a conclusion, cannot decide the future course of treatment. Oh, this person is suffering from dengue. Just by fever is only a symptom. So this is social diagnosis. Many a time, what we see is only symptom, not the real problem. The child is not going to school. It is not the real problem. It is only a symptom. There is some real problem behind. That is the diagnosis. So this diagnosis is very important. You need not become a very big specialist. You need not become a psychologist to diagnose this simple problem. That's why social diagnosis, social casework emerged from this kind of social diagnosis. When Mary Richmond gave this idea, when she wrote this book, Social Diagnosis, she gave a kind of short-term therapy. It's a short-term psychological therapy. She endorsed social casework. You know, on the other hand, psychological treatment, psychological counseling, a long-term therapy. But she understood many of the social problems are very simple, which the social workers can diagnose and can resolve, can give a short-term 6-month casework instead of 3 years counseling. So that is understanding the social background, not blaming the child. Here see, we have taken out the blame from the child, trying to fix the problem in the social setup. That is social diagnosis. Sometime by meeting the school, meeting the parents, this dropout issue may be resolved. When the parents simply ask the child, अरे बेटा आज क्या सीखा है स्कूल में, आपका होमवर्क मुझे दिखाओ, आज क्या क्या सीखा आपका स्कूल में क्या क्या सीखा है. Simply asking this question, the child can become serious. Sometimes you find when you visit the houses, the parents are too much busy. I have often noticed the TV is on 24 hours. The parents are so much busy with their own things, their own livelihood. Early morning, they leave for their livelihood, their job. They simply pack the child's tiffin and this school bag and tell them, go to the school. Once the child, as early as possible, they send the child out of the home. They never inquire whether the child reaches the school or not, because these parents have to reach the workplace and they come so late, they have no time, they have only time to cook and clean the house and wash the cloth of the children. There is no time, real time to spend with the child to inquire about the education of the child. If the parents spend at least 5 minutes daily, just simply ask the child, "Aaj kya sikha hai? What did you learn today?" Just this much of care is required for the child to become serious. The child will understand. मुझे हर दिन पूछ रहे हैं मम्मी पापा, मुझे तो स्कूल में जाना ही पड़ेगा. This doesn't happen. Many a time parents क्या सोचते हैं, मैंने तो कुछ पढ़ाई भी किया नहीं, मुझे तो पढ़ने को आता है नहीं, मैं क्या पढ़ा, मुझे क्या आता है उसके पढ़ाई के बारे में, क्यों पूछूं? उसका जरूरत नहीं. मैं पढ़े लिखे सिर्फ पूछ तो सकते हैं ना, बेटे को पूछ सकते हैं आपने क्या सीखा, स्कूल में क्या क्या हो गया. Sometimes the parents have inferiority complex. मैंने तो कुछ सीखा नहीं, फिर बच्चों की पढ़ाई के बारे में क्या पूछूं? So the caseworker can empower the parents, even if the illiterate parent can inquire. So that shows that the parents are interested in the education of the child. So this comes in the treatment part. I have come to the treatment part. That is the intervention. This is the intervention. So we have fixed the problems. That is the diagnosis. The diagnosis gives the future direction of the intervention. Now comes the third part. That is the motivation part. That is the intervention. That is the real casework. Much of the casework is spent on this third part. So I have told you, study, diagnosis, treatment. Study is fact finding, understanding the data. Diagnosis is analyzing the data and fixing the problem and set the goal for the social casework. What should be the goal? What should I achieve? What should the client achieve because of my casework intervention? So that comes in diagnosis. Now come to the last part, that is the treatment, that is the intervention. So in intervention, there are several aspects which the casework has to deal with, has to take into consideration. So we can broadly classify two types of intervention. The first one is called behavioral modification. Vartanavar badalav. The client has to change his or her behavior. Some changes in the person. That is the individual change. Change within the personality. Change in the behavior of the child. Behavior. That is different type. Even the cognitive behavior. Change in the thinking process. Behavior can be what is overt, everybody can see, covered, which no one can see. My dreams, my thinking, my vision, my motivation. That is the cognitive behavior. That is, we can say, mental behavior. The thinking process. उसमें बदलाव चाहिए. Many a time, casework focus on the change in the individual's thinking. So that is the behavior modification. That is the first part of the intervention. The second part of the intervention is behavioral modification. This behavioral modification, this environmental modification, that takes place in the family setup, that takes place in the school setup, that takes place in other stakeholders, in the environment of the child. So let me come back to the example, the school dropout child, whom you have as a caseworker identified, and you have found that this child is dropout, the child is in the street. So we have found out in the diagnosis, the school dropout is not the real problem. The real problem is the negligence on the part of the parents and the lack of motivation. Now, motivating the child is the intervention. How to motivate? So you have to, in this phase, you have to talk with the child and ask him what you want to become. What is your future? What your parents says to you? What is your teacher say to you? What you want to become in your life? Do you want to become like your mother, who is going early in the morning to work to others' house, to clean their houses as a domestic labor? Do you want to become like your father, who is a daily wage worker, who is a vegetable vendor? Obviously, the child will see that, no, I want to become an artist. I want to become a film star. I want to become a manager, maybe a doctor, maybe a driver, maybe a government, maybe a teacher, maybe a regular employee. So you must say that you can convince, you can interact with the child and tell that the child can change his life only by education. Education is the only variable, only thing that can change the child's future. So that way you can also show some movie clip how the great people have become great because of their education. You can give models of our President APJ Abdul Kalam and many heroes, many great scientists, artists, big people who have achieved, who have come up from very humble background, who have achieved great things in their life. So that way you can motivate the child. This is one part of intervention. And the second, environmental modification, you can visit the family, you can interact with the parents and make them realize how to take notice of the child's education, how to bring changes in the child's life. So that is the treatment. Now, how to check whether your treatment was successful? You have to take feedback. After several sessions, you have to take feedback from the child, from the parents, by visiting the school. You take feedback from the teachers and see whether the child started attending the class. So this is the fourth P. So today we have discussed all the components of casework: person, problem, place, and process. So in next lesson, we are going to learn the principles of social casework. So we have completed very important topic today, the components of social casework. So while you go through this lesson, never forget to ask your queries in the comment box. I'll be responding to them as and when you give your comments, and wish you all the best and see you in the next class. Thank you.